Members of government of OECS member states, Senator the Honorable Garth Wilkin, Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, St. Kitts Nevis, Dr. Didacus Jules, Director General of the OECS, Mr. Joel Richards, Senior Technical Specialist for Trade, the Permanent Delegation of the OECS in Geneva, and Officer in Charge, Economic Affairs and Regional Integration Division, Dr. Valda Henry, Deputy Governor, Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Ms. Natasha Greaves, Head of Office at International Organization for Migration in Dominica, Mr. Gordon Charles, CEO, the J.Q. Charles Group of Companies, Dr. Natasha Motley, Strategic Advisor on Migration and Gender to the OECS Director General, permanent secretaries and other senior officials of the Departments of Immigration, Health, Education, Social Protection, the Attorney General's chambers from across the OECS region, OECS Commission staff, representatives of regional airlines, media personnel, Caribbean citizens of OECS member states and the wider Caribbean region, and indeed in the diaspora. Good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us today for our panel discussion on the theme, Free Movement in the OECS, a Citizen's Rights. I'm Wendy Grenade here in beautiful Grenada, and I'll be your moderator for this session. We're excited to have a diverse group of experts here to share their insights and answer your questions. Now, before we dive into the discussion, let me welcome Mr. Joel Richards, who is a Senior Technical Specialist for Trade in Geneva, to share some opening remarks on behalf of the OECS Director General, Dr. Didacus Jules. Mr. Joel Richards.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Dr. Wendy Grenade, Prime Ministers and members of government of OECS member states, panelists and presenters. First, Honorable Garth Wilkin, Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Henry, Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Ms. Graves, Head of the IOM Office in Dominica, Mr. Charles, well-known CEO of the J.Q. Charles Group of Companies, Dr. Motley, Strategic Advisor to the OECS Director General, colleagues from the OECS Commission, representatives of regional bodies, media personnel present, and of course, the citizens of the OECS member states. It is with great pleasure that I am addressing you today as we continue to build on the foundation of regional integration within the OECS. This year actually marks the 14th anniversary of the signing of the revised Treaty of Basseterre, establishing the economic union among 7 of our small island developing states in the OECS. And this milestone is not only a testament to the shared vision of our leaders, but it is certainly representative of the commitment of our people to creating a unified and prosperous region. The benefits that flow from the OECS Economic Union are very clear. Citizens of protocol member states are enjoying significant privileges under the free movement of persons regime. These include the right to live indefinitely in any protocol member state, hassle-free travel within the economic union using a government-issued ID, mutual recognition of driver's licenses, the elimination of work permits requirements, and of course, the portability of long-term social security benefits. These are certainly not abstract concepts, but they represent very practical benefits that change lives, they foster economic opportunities, and empower our citizens to participate in a truly integrated region. Whether you are a student pursuing an education, uh, a business owner expanding into new markets, or a family seeking a better life across borders, these freedoms represent the tangible impact of regional integration. But as we celebrate these successes, we must also acknowledge the work that remains to be done. There are areas where the implementation of these rights is not yet fully realized. For instance, ensuring indefinite stay and the removal of work permits for non-OECS spouses and the elimination of barriers to accessing healthcare, education, and social security benefits are essential next steps in this journey that we are on. The OECS contingent rights policy, approved in 2015, lays the foundation for delivering these benefits. However, to accelerate the full realization of these rights, we need to work towards removing the legislative and administrative hurdles that still exist. The model OECS Contingent Rights Bill, currently under review by protocol member states, represents a key mechanism in making these rights a reality for all citizens of the OECS. Let us also not forget the significance of these rights for families and businesses. By protecting the unity of the family and fostering cross-border economic opportunity and activities, we strengthen the fabric of our region. Businesses, especially small enterprises, will thrive in an environment where labor and talent can flow freely, expanding markets and certainly creating opportunities for growth. Workers will also benefit from a more seamless movement between states, and this flexibility will certainly enhance our community's resilience, especially in times of disaster or economic need. But for all of us, for all of this, sorry, to truly work, it is essential that every citizen understands and embraces their rights. Empowerment comes from knowing what is guaranteed under the revised Treaty of Basseterre, advocating for those rights, and ensuring that they are respected. Informed citizens are better equipped to push for the reforms and improvements necessary to make free movement and contingent rights fully functional. As we continue to build one OECS community in all its dimensions, economically, culturally, and socially, let us remember that our success relies on collective action, the collective action of our governments, our businesses, and our citizens all working together. By understanding and exercising our rights, we become agents of change, creating a region that is prosperous, equitable, and united. Ladies and gentlemen, it's certainly my pleasure again to offer these brief remarks on behalf of the Director General of the OECS, who would have wanted to be with you today, but is also attending other important matters in Barbados at this time, addressing an agriculture symposium that is taking place there. It's only left to me to really wish you every success for the rest of this webinar. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Mr. Richards, for setting the context for us in terms of helping us understand some of the rights that we have within the OECS. Indeed, we have meaningful integration in the OECS and we enjoy practical benefits. But as Mr. Richards pointed out, there's still some unfinished business. Now, let us look at two brief videos that explain the free movement of persons and contingent rights very nicely, I think. As most of you may know, and as Mr. Richards explained, OECS citizens currently enjoy the right to hassle-free travel, indefinite stay, and access employment in member states, full member states, that is. However, there are other rights that are due to take effect soon as it pertains to social protection, education, healthcare, and the treatment of non-OECS spouses. Now, as the OECS Commission works to finalize the model legislation that will bring these additional rights into effect, the seniors in these videos will explain how the current rights on the free movement apply and how those outstanding rights would be applied once the legislation takes effect. So let us look at these two brief videos.
Sophie is a Saint-Lucian who returned home after studying and working in Europe. Her ideal job is in an organization located in Antigua and Barbuda. Sophie calls the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for information.
Good day. My name is Sophie, and I need some information about moving to Antigua and Barbuda.
Sophie explains her background, the job opportunity in Antigua and Barbuda, and her concerns about requirements to get a work permit.
Sophie, the good news is that Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines are signatories to the Protocol of Eastern Caribbean Economic Union. Because of this, you have the right to free movement to and from these countries. This means you can travel to any of the protocol member states, live and work there, and enjoy the right to treatment equal to that of citizens of that member state. You do not need a work permit, and you will have access to national insurance.
That's great. I have a question. My mother is elderly and often sick. If she moves with me, will she be entitled to any healthcare benefits?
Well, Sophie, both you and your mother, as citizens of a member country, can enjoy a number of contingent rights that support freedom of movement. Your mother will have the same access to healthcare at the same cost and on the same terms as citizens of the member state you're traveling to.
That's amazing. One more thing. My husband is from Spain. Does he also qualify for these rights?
Yes, through you, your spouse and any dependent family members who are not from the 7 protocol member states will have access to live and work in Antigua and Barbuda and enjoy the same benefits as you. This includes rights such as the right to benefit from social safety net mechanisms, cash advances, and labor market schemes.
Wow, the OECS Economic Union is real, advancing, and making it easy for me to move. Thanks, Wilfred.
Charles is the owner of a roofing company in Dominica. A major storm has struck the Eastern Caribbean, and Charles wants to expand his company, taking his Dominican workers to St. Kitts and Nevis. He seeks advice from his friend, Shelley, a lawyer.
Hi, Charles. I hear you're looking to make some moves.
Yes, I am. My employees are all Dominicans, and they want to know if they'll be able to relocate their families. Will they have access to national insurance, healthcare, and access to schools for their children?
Moving can be demanding, but within the Eastern Caribbean Economic Union, your workers and their families can move freely. They have access to contingent rights, which are rights that support free movement. They have a right to live and work without a work permit. They have access to national insurance, social safety nets, cash advances, and labor market schemes. They also have access to education and healthcare on the same terms as a citizen of any protocol member state they travel to.
But what if their family members are not from one of the protocol member states? One of my foremen has a stepson who is a Jamaican citizen.
I see. The law says that any dependent children of yours or your spouse under the age of 18 can enjoy the right to live in the protocol member state. The law also states that the child will have the right to access primary and secondary education like any other child who is a citizen of the protocol member state. After the child turns 18, if he or she is still living in the member state, the contingent rights law provides options for him to retain some rights and remain in the country. Under certain conditions, the law also provides options for family members to retain their rights and remain in the member state in case the principal beneficiary dies, or there is a divorce or a separation.
Wow! The OECS Economic Union is real, advancing and making it easy for my business to move.
Wow, indeed. Many islands, one region. I really thank the OECS Commission for putting these videos together, because whether you are Sophie or whether you are Charles, This information is very important and helps us understand the dynamics of the OECS Economic Union. Now, the rights of OECS citizens to move freely impact many different sectors and many organizations. I will now invite Dr. Natasha Motley, who is the Strategic Advisor on Migration and Gender to the OECS Director General, to share insights on ongoing efforts to strengthen data production and collection within the OECS, which will give an overview of the importance of data in supporting the free movement of people in the OECS. Dr. Motley?
Thank you, Dr. Grenade, and good morning to all protocols observed. I've been given 10 minutes to make my presentation, so I'm gonna move quickly. I'm unable to share my screen. Trying to share my screen, I'm not able to share.
Technical assistance, please, to allow Dr. Motley to share.
She can go ahead.
I'm seeing the share feature, but the document is not coming up. Okay. Can I email the document?
Go ahead and email it, but you can begin to speak to it in the interest of time.
Okay. All right. So good morning, all. I'm going to look at the data collection processes that are existing in the OECS region, and specifically what the OECS Commission has done to initiatives that they've taken to help in production and management of data for the free movement of persons in the OECS. So the Eastern Caribbean Economic Union, just quickly, which was established in 2010 under the revised Treaty of Bastia. It created an integrated space where goods and people, services, businesses can move freely within our region. And as we saw in the videos, citizens from protocol member states do have the right to move freely, to live in any other member state, and to enjoy contingency rights. And these contingency rights include social and economic rights to support the free movement of OECS citizens. Now, of course, in terms of the framework, although I'm speaking about data this morning, it's important to look at the framework and the political will that is supporting the need or the requirements for data or the importance of data to free movement and contingency rights. So two main frameworks which are critical include the OECS policy on rights contingent on the right to free movement, which was established in 2015. And under this policy, citizens have their rights to work and live and start a business in protocol member states. And family members can also access labor market schemes, education, health, social protection, and other safety net mechanisms in the same way that citizens of the host country enjoy those rights. There is also the legislation, which is the model bill that you would have heard about earlier on. And that model bill is the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States Contingency Rights Act of 2022. And although this has been approved, it has not been adopted by the protocol member states as yet. But what this bill does is that it gives teeth to the policy. Under this legislation, and when this legislation is adopted by protocol member states, it will allow citizens and their family members within our region to have equal treatment in terms of moving and living and enjoying contingency rights. So the OECS free movement regime is in many ways the foundation for migration flows and regional integration in our region. And it recognizes that free movement or free mobility or human mobility, like I often say, advances economic and regional development. Our protocol member states and our heads of states have committed. They've committed to free movement and contingency rights. And part of that commitment is to sign on to international instruments such as the Sustainable Development Goals and the UN Global Compact for Migration. And under these instruments, the commitment is to facilitate orderly, safe, regular, and responsible migration and mobility of people, including through the implementation of well-planned migration policies. The global impact, which calls for safe and orderly movement of people, has a list of objectives guiding this mandate. And the first objective in that global compact has to do with data. So it speaks to and it underscores the importance of having reliable, timely, and disaggregated data to advance evidence-based policies and well-managed migration and governance in our region. So free movement in many ways is in fact part of migration movements, part of regional integration, and our heads have committed to advancing policy that is data responsive. At the OECS Commission, the Director General has also committed, in terms of the work that the Commission is doing, has committed to the importance of data and using data to guide policy and to guide action and planning in the Commission. And according to the Director General, and this is a direct quotation, he says that in the data realm, we have a data for decision-making movement, which is to redesign the entire data architecture in the OECS to shape the direction of where we are going with data and to open up a whole new range of possibilities for data for decision-making. So some of the initiatives at the OECS Commission that enhance free movement of persons' data include policy dialogues on creating mechanisms for creating an enabling environment and harmonization of data. And the discussion we are having here today is part of these dialogues where we are speaking about the need for harmonized data in our region. There's also a focus on harmonizing border management systems for improved data collection and sharing because of a lot of the data that we are, in fact, the main data that we are collecting on free movement is being collected at our borders through our immigration systems. So there is a focus at the OECS Commission to harmonize border management systems so that we can have more standardized and harmonized data collection processes. The OECS Commission also has a rights program, which under this program includes training border management personnel. And again, it's important that our immigration border management personnel understand the need and the importance of data collection, and collecting comprehensive data. The OECS Commission is also committed to a culture of data protection and the use of data at the Commission, as was indicated in the quotation from the Director General. And finally, the OECS Commission does have several regional and international partnerships for research that is promoting evidence-based data, collecting data, and enhancing data collection processes. And two of these partnerships that I can speak to specifically because of my involvement in these partnerships include research projects with the IOM, the International Organization for Migration, and the IOM supports a lot of the migration and human mobility initiatives in the OECS. They've done so for many years, and they have several research projects and interventions that are supporting data. And of course, the CARICOM CSME unit, of which, of course, the OECS is part of, OECS is part of CARICOM, but the CSME unit is working in collaboration with the OECS Commission and the IOM to enhance data through developing a regional glossary, which, of course, will help to harmonize the data, the indicators that we are interested in when we collect our data, and how we can enhance data sharing across the region. So some of the research that has been done from about 2015 to now include, and these studies are available online. They are in fact available on the IOM's website and some on the OECS Commission's website, where they speak to research projects and studies that have been done, and full reports are available. In 2018, there was the Migration Governance in the Caribbean project. In 2019, there's a free movement of persons in the Caribbean project, again, supported by the IOM. In 2023, Migration, Integration, and Diaspora Engagement Study, International Migration in the Caribbean Study. And currently, we have two important studies that I'm involved in, which is enhancing data collection on free movement of persons in the OECS and developing a regional glossary for the OECS and CARICOM to harmonize data collection processes. So the data ecosystem and includes the institutions, of course, that collect free movement of persons data. And I have a list of institutions here, organizations. The list is not exhaustive, but it includes the main agencies in the OECS, in member states rather, that are involved in data collection. And they are collecting data either in a deliberate way, meaning that there are deliberate surveys or research projects or interventions that are focused on collecting free movement data, or data is being collected as part of their mandate to advance regional integration, or the data is being collected in an administrative way. So as part of daily administrative operations, data is being collected. So these institutions or agencies include the Immigration and Customs divisions and departments, our tourism authorities, our national statistical offices, our labor departments, our social security and NIS, foreign affairs, external affairs ministries, our diaspora units, and of course, the development agencies that are working in partnership with member states, OECS member states, and of course, researchers like myself, our academics and researchers who are doing research and studies around migration, regional integration, free movement, and so forth. So these are some of the agencies involved in data collection. One of the main challenges is, of course, well, there are several challenges with data being collected by these agencies, and I will look at some of these later on. But before doing that, I want to speak to what are the benefits of the free movement data. And I think this is the crux of the discussion today. So the benefits of data to the free movement regime and to contingency rights are many, but I tried to summarize maybe about 5 key benefits. First of all, the data will allow us to track progress towards our commitments to contingency rights. So in the videos, you saw all the rights that citizens of the OECS and their dependents have, but in order to track progress, to see if we are in fact achieving these targets, we have to have data to tell us if we are in fact achieving those things. Secondly, the data is important to monitor how regional integration is working, because if we have a regional, if we have an integrated space, a shared domestic space, the data tells us, is regional integration successful? Is it working? Is it working well? Thirdly, the data facilitates national development, of course, in member states, individually and collectively, because the data allows us to assess what are our gaps, our skills gaps, especially as it relates to employment and our labor markets, and what are the availability of skills within our region. So we don't have to go outside of our region to get particular skills for different sectors, but through our free movement regime, through regional integration, persons within our region, member states can move and work in different countries based on skills requirements. Fourthly, the data facilitates responsive policy making. Of course, we see that under contingency rights, there are rights related to social protection, education, and health. So when we have the data, we can use the data, we can use comprehensive data to see what are the needs in terms of policy related to these different areas. And finally, the data supports security, national security in our region. In terms of knowing if there are any threats, if there are any risk, data sharing becomes very important. So member states can share data in a timely fashion, in a consistent way, so that these threats are picked up in a rapid way. What are some of the benefits of the data for contingency rights? So of course, one of the main concerns that protocol member states have, and I think this would account for why the legislation has not been adopted in member states, is that can they afford to give contingency rights to citizens of OECS member states and their dependents? Because it's also dependents who are from third-party countries. So budgeting becomes important. There's a need to budget in member states to understand the extent to which countries can afford financially, can afford to give rights to members. And the data is important for budgeting. The data tells us who is benefiting from contingency rights and which rights are being accessed. Is it education? Is it health? Is it social benefits? Is it pensions? What rights are being used? Who is moving and who is taking advantage of these rights? The data also protects families and children. As you have seen in the contingency rights and in the policy, the goal is to keep families together when they move, to protect families, families in terms of citizens and their dependents, which include children, the elderly, disabled members of the family, persons with disabilities. So the data tells us, it gives us the information that we need to understand the dynamics of families when they move, and it helps protect families and children. So for example, child trafficking, for example, it is easier to identify those areas when we have good data and the data is shared regionally. The data also allows us to monitor if there are discriminatory practices against citizens, right? So if persons are trying to access their rights and they're being discriminated against, the data will allow us to see where discrimination is taking place and the rate at which discrimination is taking place. The data, of course, helps us to plan for disasters. And you know, our region is disaster prone. We have increased, with climate change, we have increased natural disasters, hurricanes and tropical storms and so forth. And persons are being displaced, persons have to relocate. We've seen the examples from Irma, Hurricane Irma, Maria, more recently. We've seen what the COVID pandemic has done. We've seen what the volcanic eruptions in St. Vincent, what has happened, and people have to be displaced. So the data allows us to plan for these displaced movements that are happening as part of free movement as well, because people do have rights to move. And it helps us to build resistance because, of course, we have good planning taking place. And then, yes, of course, the data is sensitizing our citizens, which we are doing today, on their rights. And it helps to build confidence in the regime, in the free movement regime.
Okay, Dr. Motley, could you kind of pull it together in the interest of time? Yes. Thanks. Good.
Yes, so just to say that there are challenges with data. Several challenges. Some include, you know, our culture of sharing data. In our region, we don't have a good culture of data sharing. We have a lot of protocols that slow down data exchange among agencies and stakeholders working in silos. So we don't know who has data, who is doing what. And of course, there's a lack of disaggregated data. So when the data exists, it is not disaggregated by gender, by sex, to tell us who are our vulnerable groups, who are our marginalized groups that are moving and so forth. So there are many recommendations and we can discuss it. I'm sure the panelists will discuss that. Recommendations for training, for investing in software, for building capacity with our agencies, to continue to sensitize and have discussions with stakeholders and agencies on why data is important and why it's critical for ensuring that we have success with our regional integration movement and with our citizens getting their contingency right. So I'll stop here and looking forward to your questions later on in the discussion. Thank you.
And thank you very much, very, very much, Dr. Motley, for your very informative presentation. Data for decision-making movement. I really like that, whether it's for our border management to enhance our security or for our labor markets. For those of you who would want a copy of Dr. Motley's presentation, which unfortunately we couldn't share, you can email freemovement@oecs.int. Free movement, we'll put it in the chat, freemovement@oecs.int. So thank you very, very much for that wonderful presentation. Now we move right into our panel discussion. Let me introduce our panelists. Senator the Honorable Garth Wilkin, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs in St. Kitts and Nevis. Dr. Valda Henry, the Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Ms. Natasha Greaves, IOM Head of Office, Dominica. Mr. Gordon Charles, who is the CEO of JQ Charles Limited, and also President of the OECS Business Council. And Dr. Clarence Henry, who is the Acting Head of the Regional Integration Unit at the OECS Commission. Thank you all for being here with us. Now, here's how today's discussion will go. We start with some opening remarks from each of our panelists, followed by a series of questions that I will pose to them. After that, we'll open the floor to questions from you, the audience, on Facebook or on YouTube. If you have questions, please submit them in the comment section. We're monitoring that and we'll be able to answer. We try, in fact, to answer as many as we can. So let's begin with the opening statements. Each panelist would have 2 to 3 minutes to give a brief overview of their thoughts on free movement in the OECS as citizens' rights. I would begin with Senator the Honorable Garth Wilkin. Then we'll continue right down the line, Mr. Gordon Charles, Dr. Valda Henry, Ms. Natasha Graves, and Dr. Clarence Henry. So you will go in that order. When I put my hand up, that means your time is up or you have like half a minute remaining. So let's begin. Senator the Honorable Garth Wilkin.
Good morning, Madam Moderator, and good morning to all of the participants. I must start with a confession. I'm an unashamed integrationist, so I'm particularly biased in favor of regional togetherness in any shape or form. Naturally, therefore, I am an advocate for free movement sub-regionally and regionally. To me, true free movement with contingent rights as a fundamental part of that is central to the vision of regional integration and harmony that underpins the OECS and the EC economic union. Our strong sub-regional union, our model sub-regional union, is founded on the principles of collaboration, shared prosperity, and mutual support among the protocol member states. So for the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, the free movement of people within the OECS is critical to fostering economic growth, enhancing the labor market, improving the quality of life for our citizens and residents, and by allowing citizens to move freely across our OECS borders for work and education, the government can better address skill shortages, stimulate innovation, and encourage the exchange of knowledge and expertise. This mobility also facilitates the flow of goods and services, which is vital for economic resilience and the diversification of all of our territories. So to avoid the dreaded hand, Madam Moderator, I'll end there for now and leave my further comments for the questions and that follow.
Thank you. Next panelist.
Hi, Gordon Charles. Welcome to everybody to the panelists and also those listening in. My presence here is really as a representative of the OECS Business Council, and primarily, which I sit on, and and our presence and efforts across the OECS to strengthen the private sector presence in dialogue in terms of the development of our sub-region. Certainly contingent rights and all that comes with it is a valid and valuable aspect of our region. And I think that it brings to light opportunities that which have already been shared by Honorable Speaker before, but also in terms of some of the things that can be brought to bear across our sub-region. A wider employment pool is one of the main things that happens because you now have more people to pull from each territory. The ability to bring business to a region along with skilled labor to perform it. So you may have a capacity in one territory that you want to expand into another. And now this allows you not just to maybe move the goods and services, but also to move with some of your skilled labor to implement it effectively in that territory, which means that you end up with a better skill potential. And by extension, this is an opportunity for knowledge and skills transfer into the new region as they learn and come up to speed with some of the benefits that will be brought by that transfer of knowledge. Another opportunity I think that is beneficial to this activity is market specialization to suit specific industries. You may have some territories that are strong in certain areas, whether it be some industries, and therefore it's an opportunity to move your entities to that region, or also look for job opportunities in that region to suit the specific industries that are strong in that region versus another. So some may be stronger in tourism, some may be stronger in agriculture, etc. And all from all perspectives, the private sector certainly can only benefit from the implementation of such an activity because it speaks to now just creating a wider base for us all to be able to pull from and find our employment strength from that wider group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Valder Henry.
Thank you. Good morning to all. I want to start off with a little story. I like stories, you know. This one comes from the World Development Report of 2023 by the World Bank entitled Migration, Refugees and Societies. In that report, it quotes a story that in the 8th century AD, the Parsis were fleeing Iran after the Arab conquest, and they sought refuge in India. And when they arrived, the leader of the Parsis was handed a full cup of milk by the leader of India as a gesture suggesting that there was no space for Parsis, the foreigners, because the place they had limited capacity to accommodate them. The Parsis leader, however, took some sugar and dissolved it into the milk to suggest that we were not coming to disrupt, and there would be, in fact, the capacity. And what we would be doing would be adding to the growth and the development of India, given all we bring. Now, in today's world with high diabetes, and in our region, we would use cinnamon, suggesting the same in terms of the spices to that. And what that suggests is that regional integration, in fact, has been going on in our region for quite a while. The OECS, CCCB, CARICOM, CDB, and other regional institutions have played a key role in facilitating the movement of persons, especially skilled persons in our region. And what do we bring? We bring our new ideas, we bring innovation. And as Minister Gaff spoke, I can say that I am a regional integrationist in the sense that, yes, I'm from Dominica. After Hurricane David in 1979, we went to high school in Barbados. I returned to Barbados to lecture at UWI. I came to St. Kitts in 1994, stayed 4 years, and I'm back from 2021, now serving as the governor of the ECCB. But prior to my return, I established, at the time, VF Inc., and I was the CEO. And as the CEO of VF Inc., and VF Inc. continues in my absence, we've worked in each and every Caribbean island. Wait not for the free movement. Wait not, and over time you saw the ease of the free movement, where you no longer needed a work permit to work. First it was a skill certificate, and even that now is not totally necessary, but I will be corrected. You also had the free movement, maybe ease of movement through, we could now travel on other documents other than a passport, facilitating our movement. Also, we have, through the ECCB, the Eastern Caribbean Automatic Clearing House, again, easy cross-border movements. The role of the bank, the OECS, and other regional institutions to strengthen the regulatory base of our organizations, protecting the interests, the finances of our members. All of that brings a confidence, and we cannot underestimate the role in policy making and decision making, provided the advice provided by our regional institutions, the OECS, the ECCB, CARICOM, which then creates that platform for the ease of movement, but more importantly, for the growth and development economically as well as socially. And as we move on to that discussion, we will delve even further in that, because we'll recognize that some of the issues happening in our region with crime and violence, that we need to pay greater attention, or as a region, we can come together to address some of those issues to lead to an overall development of our nation, where we are agile, we are resilient, we are adaptable, and we are confident and forward-looking, recognizing that there is a place for each of us in this world. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Henry. Mr. Tasha Greaves.
Good morning, colleagues. I hope everyone can hear me clearly from this end. Indeed, it is a pleasure to be here, a part of this esteemed panelists. Dr. Murtley did justice for IOM when she expounded on the body of work that we have done. We have been a very good partner to the OECS. We've worked in many areas in terms of migration, environment, climate change, border management, humanitarian response, and evidence-based policy development. Just to list a few of what we have done. The topic today is of profound significance as we navigate today's conversation in the context of SIDS. Free movement policies are crucial for disaster resilience and sustainable development. They allow for quick relocation of the affected populations, enhancing cooperation and resource sharing among member states. This improves disaster response and recovery efforts, which is vital to our region prone to natural disasters. It enhances resilience and adaptability in the face of climate change and other challenges, ensuring that our region can strive in years to come. So indeed, again, it's a privilege for us to be here, and we will delve much more into the context as we move into the conversation. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Ms. Greaves. Dr. Clarence Henry.
Thank you, Dr. Grenard. You know, speaking last allows me the opportunity to sort of summarize some of what my fellow panelists have said. I think I want to start by talking about stronger together, which is fundamentally what the OECS regional integration arrangement has brought about. The ability of several small island developing states to be able to navigate challenges, economic challenges, whether it be low growth, trade competitiveness issues, social challenges, and of course, the climate change issue. I think fundamentally what we've seen with the economic union that the OECS has been advancing over the last 14 years is that the free movement of persons regime is a central component of this. And not just central in the sense that it is part of the several regimes of free movement, but fundamentally it connects all the regimes of the economic union. And I've seen some examples have been highlighted here. So certainly following the impact of Hurricane Maria, the movement of persons in terms of finding safe haven, but also fundamentally, very important, the ability of the call for Dominica to build back stronger. The fact that persons were able to move from the other member states into Dominica, and the minute they arrive, were able to work and support the rebuilding effort. So I think coming out of our webinar today, there will be several examples that we can highlight that really speaks to the core of why the free movement of persons regime is a fundamental component of our economic union, and why, as we are very, very close to completing its full implementation, we need the support of the average citizen in understanding the benefits that free movement brings to them, but also in agitating for the complete implementation of a regime that will bring tremendous benefits to them and the region in total. So thanks, Dr. Grenard, and certainly we look forward to some of the questions that will come later on.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Henry, and thanks to all the panelists for those insightful opening statements. And we know indeed that regionalism must be meaningful to people where they are. And what we've been hearing so far in this webinar is that the OECS does provide practical benefits for businesses, for citizens. We want to delve a little deeper by raising some questions. And Dr. Clarence Henry, we'd start with you. And take us back to Sophie and Charles. What is the OECS contingent rights policy? And what rights are covered?
Thank you, Dr. Grenard. I want to start by saying the contingent rights policy is at the heartbeat of free movement process. It really defines those benefits that our citizens get. And we have it in two buckets, right? You have the general rights and you have the social rights, right? And let me just detail these importantly. And just to give some further information about the contingent rights, as many of our citizens would appreciate, the contingent rights policy, which was approved by the OECS authority in 2015, has been a policy that has seen tremendous effort by OECS member states in terms of its implementation. The general rights, which is the start. So Sophie travels from her member state and to a protocol member state. The minute she arrives, she gets indefinite stay. Indefinite stay by proving that she is a citizen of a protocol member state. That's the first right. Fundamental. Beyond that, she now has the ability to register for Social Security. That's a critical part in allowing her now to partake in the labor market in that host protocol member state. And most importantly, the ability to start to work as soon as she arrives. Because as with the citizens of that protocol member state, she has the right to work without work permit. That is fundamental. And now we are seeking to extend these rights to include the third country spouse. Because let's face it, how are we able to move from our member state to another participating member state, protocol member state, if we have challenges moving our family. And we don't know, people find love anywhere, everywhere. And so you may not find love in your own country. You may find love in a different region outside of our region. And so that person needs to be able to bring across their third country spouse and for that spouse to be able to benefit. And those benefits include the indefinite stay, include the ability to work without work permit. You know, just to sort of wrap up this first question, you know, a very active commissioner of the OECS once highlighted that sometimes our challenge is that we do very good at bringing persons to the border. We need to do a lot more beyond the border. And I think the social rights speaks to that. The social rights speaks to that because now that I'm in the country, I should be able, as a citizen of OECS, be able to access primary education, secondary education, healthcare, social protection. And this is what the contingent right seeks to do. And these rights, to a large extent, have already started implementing by member states. And what we need to do now is to seek to ensure that there is a seamless implementation of all the other rights. Yes. And certainly we expect at the end of it all that those rights, as they implemented, would bring a better net outcome for everyone.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to probe further, but I'm happy that you distinguished for us general rights and social rights. Because when we think about integration, sometimes we think that economic integration is just about the market. But if we have people-centered integration, we understand that we are building economies, but we are also building societies. And it's important to understand that social rights are paramount as well. But I want to specifically ask Dr. Henry, which OECS member states will participate?
Thank you. In fact, you know, in terms of the participation, which OECS member states currently participate, because as it stands, the economic union is being implemented and the free movement regime is quite advanced. So I'm hoping there are students who have joined in as well, because you know integration is a critical component of several of the subjects at the CSEC level, even at CAPE as well. So Antigua and Barbuda. So we tend to keep it simple. All the independent member states are members of the OECS. So we have Antigua and Barbuda, we have Dominica, we have Grenada, right? We have St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and Grenadines. And then we also have another member state, the seventh, which is not an independent member state, but a critical member, founding member of the OECS, Montserrat. So these seven member states that we refer to as protocol member states, because again, the revised Treaty of Bastia, which replaced the original Treaty of Bastia, the 1981 treaty, the revised Treaty of Bastia, signed in 2010, allowed for a special protocol in that treaty that speaks to the establishment of an economic union. And these are the member states that are signatories to the protocol member states. Of course, we are to the protocol. We expect in the future more and more small states in particular may consider joining the OECS and perhaps joining the protocol to become an economic union member state.
Okay, so very good. So that means the members that are associate members, this does not apply. Good.
Does not apply. However, we are all one OECS family.
Yes, we understand.
So in several things that we do programmatically, we do ensure that associate member states benefit from these. But in terms of the direct benefits of the free movement of persons and other aspects of the economic union, it would be the citizens of these 7 protocol member states.
Okay, so just quickly, in terms of the expectations of citizens, if an OECS citizen is moving, you mentioned social protection. What about NIS benefits, for example? Tell us about some of the expectations that citizens should legitimately have.
Well, certainly, I think I'll go back to because it's a process. The expectation is one, upon arrival, you present your passport, you present your ID card. We expect immigration officials, once there are no national security concerns, to facilitate the citizen and to grant that person the indefinite stay. And I must certainly applaud the heads of immigration across the OECS because their staff have been excellent in meeting these requirements. Certainly, we still have some service standards to improve in terms of how persons may be received, despite the fact that they're getting their indefinite stay. The fact that you have the stamp that says OECS free movement indefinite stay allows the citizen to present themselves at the National Insurance Services Corporation, the NICs, the Social Security, and get registered. That registration, of course, is critical because we do understand the value that Social Security brings to individuals. Certainly, during the COVID-19 pandemic era, we really appreciated that value as well. The other thing of importance, I think, that needs to be mentioned is that because, again, you have that indefinite stay, and a lot of things surrounds the indefinite stay is the power that says that you are welcome, you are one of us, you are now allowed to proceed, right, beyond the border and take advantage of the benefit, right? So that OECS citizen is also expected to, if this person has a family, has small children, to be able to register his or her child at a public primary or secondary school institution under the same terms and conditions as the citizen of that host protocol member state.
Yes.
The same thing for healthcare as well. So these are the expectations, and of course, citizens need to look out to ensure that as they take advantage of free movement, that these expectations are met.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to now move to Mr. Charles. Mr. Charles, as president of the OECS Business Council, what do you think are the benefits of free movement of people to employers and industries in terms of trade and business? You are muted. Please unmute. You are still muted?
No, I'm clear now. Sorry about that.
Okay,
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, I touched on it a bit earlier, but I'm going to reiterate and expand a bit. First of all, we need to appreciate the fact that our sub-region suffers from a lack of economies of scale. Each of these islands are very small, and therefore our human resource is limited in each territory, and also our opportunities are sometimes limited. And you compare ourselves, you go to the bigger territories, Trinidad, Jamaica, and so on, and you see anything that is being done is on a much larger scale very often, and therefore it reduces economic operating costs of businesses. Here is an opportunity where, due to a wider employment pool, including the diaspora of all of the sub-region, you now have the opportunity to bring more people to the opportunity that you are seeking. And this works in both directions, both in a case where you're looking to take business to other territories, or where there is an opportunity for employment and employees to move to other territories for business opportunities. The diaspora is out there. Rather than having to just be concerned about, well, I can look outside of St. Lucia to the St. Lucia diaspora, I can now go across the OECS diaspora in North America and the UK and so on, and find people who are able to come in and add value to whatever business interest we're looking at. This ability to bring business to a region along with the skilled labor to perform it is important. It means now that, as I said, if we want to transfer knowledge, and there are examples of it already where some businesses have moved into other islands across the OECS where they've mastered their business in one territory and they've moved it and expanded it to another and brought with it some of the skilled labor that they have, training the labor in the next territory and bringing them up to speed quicker so that they can then take over and continue running. So therefore, you have better skill potential. The opportunity for knowledge and skills transfer with that training and that capacity to bring in the technology and the knowledge from one territory to the next, including spouses, because very often we find the spouses that we have brought along with us, and especially those out from third country markets and so on, may have different exposure, different opportunities, and bring different capacity to the table as well. It means that we can also benefit from that person's background as well and that person's capacity. So these are some of the things: market specialization to suit specific industries. As I said, for example, we know that St. Vincent, for example, is strong in agriculture, and we've seen businesses where the Solution Enterprise has gone across to St. Vincent and attempted to participate in the development of products and so on in St. Vincent because that is where the industry is strong. So there's an opportunity to move to the territories where businesses can shape themselves, and it's also an opportunity for employees to be able to move to according to the circumstances, to islands where they feel there's an opportunity for them to benefit.
Thanks very much, Mr. Charles, for helping us understand and put it in context the important role of business and intra-OECS trade. We know that the financial architecture becomes important to enhance regionalism. And we are very blessed in the OECS to have a single currency. I want to go to Dr. Valda Henry now. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank can play a very important role. It does play, in fact, a significant role in the Eastern Caribbean Economic Union. And this is important for the free movement of people. Dr. Henry, can you touch on some of the ways the currency union contributes to the free movement of people? And I'll just throw a second question in. Are there ongoing initiatives to facilitate easier cross-border transactions, reducing financial barriers? I see some questions in the chat on this. Reducing financial barriers as people move within the OECS. Tell us about the role of the ECCB.
Thank you very much, Dr. Grenard. Indeed, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank established by agreement July 5th, 1983, took effect October 1st, 1983. And so in a few weeks, we'll be celebrating our 41st anniversary. Last year, we had lots of celebration for the 40th anniversary of the ECCB. But ECCB plays a critical role in facilitating regional integration. One, by the obvious, in terms of bringing in persons from all our member states. And our member states are the 7 protocol member states plus Anguilla. Anguilla is a member of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. So that's the obvious part. But more importantly, ECCB facilitates and fosters regional integration through really our mandate. And one of our key mandates is what? Monetary stability. And by the pegging of our Eastern Caribbean dollar to the US dollar, and that was as of 1976, and we have that currency is one of the most stable currencies worldwide. We have, by the agreement, we are to maintain a reserve of 60% at a minimum. At no time, and we have an operation minimum of 80%, saying our reserve should never go down to 80. But at no time in its almost 41 years has ECCB ever breached or reached anywhere close to breaching both its operational mandate minimum as well as the legislative minimum. And that stability of the currency, and for most parts, is above 90%, which translates and means that for every EC dollar that's in circulation, we have 90 US cents in reserves. The truth is it's more. Right now it's about 96 US cents more. even during the COVID, the pandemic, and the uncertainties and the turmoil in the financial markets in the last few years, our currency held strong and again did not breach those minimums. And what that stability does is actually fosters trade. So a business person knows tomorrow that rate in terms of doing their trades and importing their goods is 2.7169. They're not going to find that it has moved to $5, $10, $20, because that volatility in currency can have detrimental impact, not just on the business and the trade, but also on individuals. Let us think of persons who have their children studying outside of the region and the US dollars. Again, they can plan, they know. Otherwise, the volatility. So that stability and that monetary stability is critical because it creates the enabling environment for growth within the region, but very importantly, globally and internationally. Again, by those reserves that we've pulled together, we invest those reserves and the return that we use, again, helps to foster economic development in our region. But not just economic development, social development. ECCB always stands ready to assist our member states. During Hurricane Maria in 2017, and everybody knows the story about Dominica, ECCB was there. The recent Hurricane Beryl and the damage caused in two of our members, maybe all states got a little bit, but two of our member states, Grenada, especially for Carriacou, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, especially Union Island, and ECCB, again for our reserves, was able to provide financial assistance to the governments to at least help in, making arrangements and providing relief. And we do that not just financially, technical assistance to our governments, our member states, but also our licensed financial institutions and the financial sector as a whole. I'll come a little bit later when I speak about the role we will play in the activity, the initiatives to ensure a stable financial space, not just for the licensed financial institutions. We do know that the credit unions play a big role in our financial space. In some countries like Dominica, the credit unions may be the second largest market share. And if anything happens to our credit union, we can think of the impact. And while the credit unions are not regulated by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, we work with the national regulators to strengthen capacity to ensure that there is stability within the overall financial sector. We cannot underscore that. And because of that, we've seen some growth in our region, but also we've seen inflation being contained. And I want to just raise that point as we talk about inflation, because yes, we all complain, because over the last maybe year, 2 years, 3 years, inflation has risen. But again, we've been able to contain it. Because remember, we are also net importers of inflation. Why? We are net importers rather than exporters. The US is the largest market for importing of goods. And if the US inflation is high, it translates that inflation in our region is going to be high. And again, we've provided assistance to enable that. I know again during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we know the impact it had, not just on the economies, but in terms of persons' health and their life and their financial stability. And the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank worked with the LFIs, and the credit unions also came on board to provide moratoriums and other assistance to lessen that financial hardship for individuals. So those are some of the ways that we facilitate the free movement and the regional integration. I come to the second part of the question, which was you asked, what are the initiatives in place to facilitate cross-border financial movement? And again, there's lots. One of our priorities for 2024 at least CB is the ease of opening a bank account. And some persons will say, but if you try to open a bank account, you will realize they ask you for how many pieces of ID, they want a utility bill. And that has been a particular hardship, especially for young people who live with families who have no utility bills in their names, especially for those marginalized persons who are living with others and don't have a bill in their name. And it means they can't. But if you don't have a bank account, it means you cannot even enter the financial space formally to then give you access to credit, to fulfill some of your own personal dreams, say to own your home, or to facilitate growth of your business, or to even start a small business. And I'm sure Mr. Charles can tell us all about the benefits of having, a good relationship with your bankers, but it starts first with having a bank account. And so for the last year and a half, we've been working with our LFIs, and that was one of the assignments they were given, how to facilitate. And so we do have a report, and that will be discussed later on when we meet with the LFIs. I think it's sometime in November, and hopefully by early next year, we should be able to put that in effect. So that's one. We established with the Eastern Caribbean Automatic Clearinghouse, ECACH. And what that means is that, before when you wrote a check or you got a check, you needed 4 or 5 days. In early days, it was like a week or two to clear. Then it moved down to 5, then it moved down to 3. With ECACH, one of the move is for almost instant clearing of documents, of checks, of payments, to facilitate payments. And by the EFTs, the electronic fund transfers within the member states, I can transfer some money to Dr. Henry, and within a few minutes, he would have received it. It gets deducted from my account as soon as that it goes in. And I'm telling you, in some banks, that transaction happens within seconds. Some it takes maybe a little bit longer. But again, and what that does, because we have shortened the time for which you can access monies and even remittances sent to you. And remittances is one of the big pluses of free movement, where persons move for better economic opportunities, and then they don't forget their families. They have their families, their parents, their siblings and others. You are able to send that money, because if you need some funds now, you need it now. You don't need it in 5 days or 6 days. Let us just think of some critical circumstances and emergencies, and we facilitate that. The Eastern Caribbean Stock Exchange is there, and we really want to encourage persons to participate. As Governor has outlined earlier, we have 1 in 25 persons are invested in the stock market anywhere. Our goal is to have 1 in 4, 20%, 1 in 5, 20% within the next 10 years. And to support that and to ensure, again, the integrity of the financial space, the Eastern Caribbean Security Regulatory Commission, ECSRC, is there to provide that regulation for that. So, we take that in. The payment systems, again, to enhance the payment system. We've passed a number of legislation to protect the space and also protect individuals, not just their finances, but their data and their privacy. That is critical. And we have 2 major initiatives which will be launched in the coming 2 years. One would be our Office of Financial Conduct. So that, and especially as our financial space closes, as we have mergers and acquisition, and the number of financial institutions are reducing, persons are concerned. But there's an advantage to that, And that was one of Governor Venner's dreams, that would consolidate our financial space. And with the consolidation, we anticipate that because of a gain of economies of scale, there will be better rates for persons. The cost of doing business would be reduced. And if the cost of business is reduced, trade increases. But the Office of Financial Conduct will come in to ensure even greater oversight of the conduct itself. So while, yes, we regulate the banks, and the Banking Act gives us the authority, and the CCB agreement, it does not really give us authority to regulate their transactions and their business and their fees and so on. Office of Financial Conduct and the legislation which has been passed by all our member states will provide that legislative teeth to do that. And I'm sure you remember earlier this year, we had all of these issues with Republic Bank, and persons were saying, what is the CCB doing? Where is its teeth? And so on. And we have lawyers here, the Attorney General is here. There are implications for going outside of your legal mandate. And yes, we have worked with the financial institutions and with the persons to ensure, that we minimize the hardship for persons because of that. And then the regional, and maybe it will be called the Eastern Caribbean Standard Setting Body, which is again a standard setting body of all the national regulators who regulate the credit unions, the insurance companies, because of that too. That sector also needs, regulated. And while yes, there are some regulatory measures, but in terms of, in order to regulate, you need to understand what you're regulating. And that standard setting body will provide the, the capacity and the opportunity for, again, that, and you notice it's a regional approach, coming together, working together to strengthen our space. And, there are lots of other things that we meet regularly with. We have what we call the consultative and the networking meetings with various institutions, the social securities, the development banks, the accountant generals, the attorney generals, the commissioners of police, the auditors. So we meet with those sectors and more to ensure again that the ease of to foster and promote our regional integration within our space and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Valda Henry. And we cannot take for granted the stability of the EC dollar, the monetary stability that we have. We cannot take for granted the institutions such as the ECCB that really act as a glue to enhance regionalism in the sub-region. We really thank you. And as I keep saying, integration must be meaningful. It must be people-driven. It must be impactful. So ease of opening a bank account, Dr. Henry, that was music to my ear. Very, very important initiatives.
Another initiative we have in terms of that is also the Credit Bureau, the launch of the Credit Bureau and the Credit Reporting Bill. That, well, yes, and some persons are like, oh, it's going to have on my history, but what it does too, it actually stabilizes the space, but also gives access to the marginalized. Because that has happened in the past. Because of who you are, and a farmer and so on, they might just say, because one, they don't have bank accounts and they cannot get access to capital. Or even if they have, they're like, oh, this is the greater risk. And then we know that we have some really bad debts caused not by the poor, not at all. But that credit bureau and that credit reporting will ensure that our credit history is maintained and known. And we are able to access even better rates based on our credit history. And so if we have a great credit history, even if a bank's rate, maybe the minimum, their base rate might be 6%, we may be able to get 5 and 4. And the persons who are able to maintain good credit rating, and I always say, the poor, in a lot of instances, have better credit history than some of the rich. Why? Because the poor does not want to owe. They don't sleep well knowing that they owe anyone. And they do all they can. And that is why, again, that also helps the banks to work with persons, because if you're always a good payer, now they see a patch, they're not just going to call in your loan. They're going to work with you because they recognize that this is maybe a temporary fix. And as I make that point, I also want to encourage persons to be open with your bankers, to advise them in advance. Don't wait for them to call you. You may be having a difficulty or will have a difficulty. Establish that good relationship, and that helps to foster even, your expansion, not just in our region. And that's one of the good things about that CSM, and especially that citizens' right. The market is now not just your national country. Your market is now the space.
Yes.
And if your families can move in with you, it allows that. And we must not underplay the importance of that, because that is also important in ensuring that our regional institutions get the brightest and the best, because they know that if I take that job, my family does not have to stay behind. They can come with me, but not only come with me, they can also be gainfully employed. Access to education, access to healthcare, and that. So we have to commend the OECS for really pushing through this mandate, which altogether helps to ensure that our regional integration is not just in words and on paper, but is a living, breathing, living thing that we can all attest to.
Yes, and thanks very much, Dr. Henry. This webinar should have ended at 11:30. It's now 11:28, and I just got some good news that we are going till 12 o'clock because we have a number of questions. What I would do, I would take the next couple panelists, so we would end the first round. We would not go into a second round with the panelists, and we would open the floor for questions and answers because we really want to hear from our participants who are here with us in the webinar. So I would pose a question to Senator Wilkin, and then we'll go to Ms. Natasha Greaves, and then we'll open the floor. So the questions that would have been for sort of second round, we'll hold on those still. So Senator, we heard about trade and business. We heard about the importance of our currency union. Let's now go to government. As a minister of government, what do you think the free movement of people and contingent rights, what does this mean or should mean for government, for policy setting, for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis and for the wider sub-region?
Well, the short answer is that moving to this next level of free movement means we are fulfilling the agreement of our heads of government and the promise to our people to create a resilient, sustainable, and I'll use Dr. Henry's word, consolidated economic union within the OECS. Because the free movement of people and contingent rights are fundamental to the vision of more integrated, resilient, prosperous EC. So it's no surprise our leaders agreed to take that step 9 years ago. We are stronger economically and socially as a bloc. No one can argue that. Rather than individual islands seeking to make their way in this increasingly competitive global space. I mean, economic and social evolutions help our people to reach their full potential and ease the brain drain, which the smaller islands continue to suffer from. Simply put, we lose some of our best people, our most talented people, our most skillful people to large international economies. True free movement allows those persons to stay within our economic space and contribute to our economic and social advancement. We no longer have to look north for opportunities and economic prosperity. We need not import into our minds the dreams of other countries, but we can create and achieve our own dreams as a people. And for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, you know, the smallest of the jurisdictions that are participating, the free movement of the people and the contingent rights offer opportunities for personal and professional growth, greater access to services, and the ability to contribute to the broader regional community. I mean, I am a child of a regional banker. So I understand, you know, I was born here, moved to Antigua, moved to Barbados with my mother, traveling around working for a regional bank. So I understand this essence of upward mobility and that need to have that comfort that you can bring your family with you, and making that decision to take this step to advance your life is much easier now with the contingent rights regime. You don't have to choose a job over your family. You can actually get both done. And, you know, so it has a personal feel for me, personal importance for me that we've reached to this step, because it allows our people to benefit economically and have a bigger marketplace in which to push their talents and their skills. And from a practical perspective, the contingent rights policy is important because it ensures that the benefits of free movement extend beyond just the physical movement. It guarantees the citizens of member states that they have access to healthcare, education, social protections, regardless of their original country of birth and residence. And it promotes inclusivity and equality. I heard that type of tone from Dr. Mortley. You know, you want it to be an equality of our people to ensure that no one is left behind as we move towards greater integration. And also in the terms of the context of natural disasters and extreme weather events. We are seeing what's happening in the world. We are feeling the extra heat every day as we step out of our doors, and we understand that climate change is real and it's affecting our countries. And this idea that if one of our territories or two of our territories are significantly damaged, the other islands can step in and accommodate persons in need, like what we did with Montserrat in the 90s. We stepped in, and a lot of Montserratians moved to St. Kitts and Nevis, and we were able to stabilize their lives while they adjusted to moving out of their home territory. So that part of it is also very important to all of our people, and I think that resonates with our people. And for St. Kitts and Nevis, it's that commitment to regional cooperation, economic development, and social protection. As I said, as the smallest of the EC populations, is even more important for the economies of scale for us to have opportunities outside in the other jurisdictions. And at the end of the day, where the rubber hits the road is people's economic well-being and their social well-being, being able to access important things like healthcare and education. So I see all pros to this process. We need to get it right. And I think we can. And I think if we fulfill that dream that our leaders had almost a decade ago, we'll be taking our economies and our countries to the next level.
Yes. Thanks, Minister. But as Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, do you foresee any challenges at all? What may be some of the challenges, and how could we, in fact, put systems in place to mitigate against them?
Okay, so the first challenge is harmonization, because if we're going to do this properly, we all have to do it simultaneously. That is always very different because whilst we operate in a single economic space, we all have different laws, different constitutions. So we sat down around the table in St. Lucia to discuss this. So when we reach that final stage of passage of the bill, it's our hope that we can do that as simultaneously as possible, so that the rights are reciprocal, truly reciprocal, because you don't want, like what happens with some of our Eastern Caribbean central bank laws, that's they're passed in some jurisdictions and they're not in others, and there's not true harmonization. So we have to pass that hurdle. There's also administrative issues, manpower to deal with the immigration administration of this type of system. But that just requires dedication and commitment of budgets to be able to accomplish that. One of the most difficult tasks, especially coming out of our recent discussions about the full regional CARICOM integration, is public awareness and acceptance. Our people have to accept that we're taking this step for their benefit. I remember at UE going into a very rural school in Barbados, and we were talking about regional integration as part of the Ambassador Corps. And what the biggest topic for grade 5 students in primary school was people coming in and taking their jobs, their parents' jobs. So, that is something that's the forefront of people's minds. So we have to make sure that the public awareness is done well, so that we can get buy-in from our people and they see the benefits definitely outweigh the cons, if there are any cons to sub-regional integration. Abuse is a concern that I raised at our meeting when we're discussing it, because there are marriages of convenience in our region, and there could be potential abuses by non-EC persons marrying EC persons just to get access to different territories. So one of the comments that I had when we discussed that was, we have to ensure that we all have marriage verification processes within our jurisdictions internally, so that we can trust that there's no bypassing of the contingent rights by bad actors, because we have to be real, bad actors exist. And we have suffered from marriages of convenience in our very recent past. So that's a reality we have to deal with. And we have to coordinate. Our immigration officials have to coordinate and share information with each other. So that is a challenge because it's not something that they do daily, but not an insurmountable challenge that we can't meet. And then I think there's political will to do this across political divides. So I don't foresee, although it is possible that, potential changes in government could hamper the process. But I think there's an air of commitment to this right now, and we need to do it right now while we're in that clear space. So I don't really see that as an insurmountable challenge. But there are a few just, technical challenges that we have to deal with, like any movement. You just have to be committed to the end goal, and I think we can all achieve it, because definitely from the Attorney General's perspective, we are committed to this process.
Right. Thanks a lot, Minister. We'll take a final question in this first round before we open up to the audience. Ms. Graves, how can contingent rights make the region more disaster resilient and responsive to potential migration shocks?
Thank you for that question. I think one of the first things when we think about resilience and the shock, we need to look at the shared learnings from the lived experience. And that is something that we have very critical here. Everybody goes back to 2017, Hurricane Maria and Dominica, that changed our block. It really changed our block. So that indigenous knowledge. AG mentioned the whole policy harmonization. That is an area that we absolutely would need to work on so that we can have this seamless migration process. Now, notwithstanding that, we have many benefits of the contingent rights. I'm going to list about 6 of them. So we have the enhanced mobility and flexibility, which means when a member state is affected, we were able to move persons seamlessly. You didn't have your passport, you didn't have your ID, member states accepted you. Of course, that comes with some of the challenges AG mentioned in terms of verifications and all of that, but that is a benefit of the contingent right. Resource sharing and coordination, we're in the same block. The challenges are not unique. So we understand how to use the resources we have, how to ensure that it reaches where it needs to go. The economic stability. Because of contingent rights, we have persons who can move and they can start gaining economic stability immediately. So you leave Dominica, you're affected, you lost your income, you lost your livelihood, but you start immediately in St. Lucia, in Antigua Barbuda. So you're able to provide for your family. Social integration and support. Because we are able to move some of those benefits, it allows for a person to feel, yes, I'm affected, but I still have the benefits that goes with me, that I can still benefit from those things. I want to look at risk reduction and preparedness. Now, when we think of risk reduction and preparedness, harmonized policies and contingent rights facilitate disaster risk reduction and preparedness strategies. Member states can implement joint programs. So we can do joint training, we can have cross learnings in all of this. And then of course, we know in times of disaster, there is this whole issue of possible exploitation and abuse. But with the contingent rights now, we ensure that our human rights are protected. Nationally, we've agreed to certain things. Regionally, we have agreed to certain things. So that whole movement of the labor and talent within the economic bloc, they are protected. Their rights that are protected, they go with them. And of course, that contributes to the overall leaving no one behind, that principle that the UN operates by and all of the countries have ascribed to. And in all of this, we have, while we don't have all the harmonized policies, we were able to develop a lot of protocols and operating procedures that allow for seamless movement during times of disaster. So there's a cross-border evacuation protocol that gives member states some guidelines as to how you ensure that you protect the human rights of persons in this time of distress. Because you're worried, you've lost your home, you've lost every livelihood. But there are documents, while we don't have the policies where we want it to be, they are documents that have been supported by the OECS to say, okay, member states, these are some guidelines that we can use. And of course, development agencies are always there to continue to work so that we can ensure that this bloc continues to lead, because truth be told, the OECS is ahead of the curve in many ways in terms of regional integration.
Yes, thanks a lot. I want to probe a little bit on social protection. Tell me a little bit about NIS. If someone leaves St. Kitts and goes to Grenada, what happens to the NIS benefit?
Now, what we know is that it's portable. In the beginning, we talk a lot about awareness. As a Caribbean national, I have moved around the region. And if you are not aware of this, you don't understand that you can actually go into your national insurance scheme. You can say to them, I am moving to this state. There's some things that you have to do in order for it to activate in another member state. But for the large part, it's that persons are not aware of what to do. So we have to do a lot more on awareness in terms of when you move, what are your rights, what are your responsibilities. Yes, the member states are going to put up their notices, but as a citizen, you now need to arm yourself with the information in order to get the benefits that are there as part of the protocols that we've all signed on to.
Okay, thanks very much. And I want to thank all the panelists for their responses to this first round of questions. But we really want to now go to the audience. We really want to thank all of you for submitting questions. We may not be able to get to all of them, but I'm asking the panelists that you be very concise in your responses so that we can cover as many questions as possible. The first question I'll pose to Dr. Valda Henry, and I'll combine two questions. The first question says, I am a British and Grenadian citizen living in Antigua. I would like to keep my savings in the region. However, it is my understanding that there is no protection of funds in the event of a bank failing. Will the ECCB be working towards a system of protection for funds held in member states? That's the first question. I want to tie that in with another question here. How easy it is to open a bank account in another OECS member state? If the business activities are primarily based in a different state, could there be jurisdictional issues regarding taxes? Dr. Henry.
Thank you very much. So the first question is that, yes, I'm pleased to announce that we will be working on the deposit insurance to provide insurance for protection for savers in the event of a bank failing. And even while we have not had it formally, the bank has tried and attempted, even in the last closure, to ensure persons with savings below a certain minimum receive the savings. But that is coming true. So by next year, hopefully, that legislation in terms of the amount, I think we've still been having discussion on to what extent is the insurance going to be. Because, the greater the insurance, the more expensive it's going to be in terms of a cost. So I'm pleased to report on that. And in terms of, yes, some banks allow, because if you have one bank, especially if they have branches in another country, that becomes generally easier to open another account. But again, the free movement of persons and it facilitates the opening of a bank account in another jurisdiction. But like everything else, there will be also the requirements. And that is why we've also had the whole project on the ease of opening bank accounts. And that should be easier for individuals. Every country has its different tax regime, and we encourage persons to be tax abiders. And so you would have to, then I won't be able to go into specifics about the tax regime, but if there are the tax regime on that. But for by and large in our region, there's really little taxes on savings per se. There are taxes on profits, there are taxes in some countries on income, but very little taxes, to the best of my knowledge, on savings.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Henry. I have a follow-up question to you, but After that, I'm coming right to Dr. Clarence Henry on education and healthcare and contingent rights. So Dr. Valda Henry, did the protocol of the Eastern Caribbean Economic Union amend the revised Treaty of Bastia? Yes, no? Did the protocol of the ECEU amend the RTB? You're muted. You're muted.
I'm not sure, but maybe Dr. Clarence will
Dr.
answer that
Clarence.
better than I can answer that.
Okay.
But I know the revised Treaty of Bastia as well as the ECCP agreement, which was revised, because while they are some of the same things and same countries, member states, they're slightly different in the objective.
Okay.
And so the revised Treaty of Bastia is about the trade and facilitation of free movement and integration. The ECCB agreement is about make the economic union, which is the central bank with one central bank for the 8 countries, with one currency for the 8 countries.
Okay.
So their objectives are different, but we share the same member states.
All right, good.
ECCB having one additional.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry. I am pulling together the next 2 questions to Dr. Clarence Henry. Do member states offer basic rights to education, healthcare, while advancing the contingent rights implementation? That's the first question. The second one that is related, free movement of people is complemented by the free circulation of goods. What is the status of free circulation of goods? Dr. Clarence Henry.
Thanks, Dr. Gwinnett. I think I would start first with the question posed to Dr. Valda Henry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Right. So essentially, the revised Treaty of Bastia brought into play the Eastern Caribbean Economic Union, the protocol. So it's part of the revised treaty. It's an essential feature of the revised treaty, essentially. So once you talk about revised treaty of the revised Treaty of Bastia, you know you need to speak of the protocol because that was a fundamental thing of it. In terms of the other question, so you know the beauty of our integration arrangement is that some of those benefits were there prior to the revised treaty itself and the economic union. So the access to primary and secondary education and access to primary and secondary health care under the same terms as a national or permanent resident of that host protocol member state have continued since the revised Treaty of Bastia. So currently, this is an element, an area where member states are actively implementing. And just for citizens, just think of your own experiences as you move and work in other protocol member states within the OECS. What was the situation for you when you had to register your child in primary school or secondary school, or had to tap into the healthcare system, the public healthcare system? What was it? Was it different for you than that of what you know that nationals are experiencing? So generally, this is what we found. Member states are implemented. The treaty essentially fundamentally highlighted its importance, right? Rather than actually just articulating the need for us to do so. Now, it was ongoing even prior to the treaty, and we certainly, and it speaks to the spirit of integration even prior to 2010, from the very start of OECS in 1981. If I may move on to the third question, I created the second question that you asked, the third question now responding to. So the free circulation of goods, and clearly it's important that we appreciate that while you have free movement of persons, there is the issue around free movement of goods and service providers and capital. It's a whole system that we're trying to put together in a very efficient manner that will have lasting impact, both at the member state level and regionally. So currently, we are advancing legislative requirements for the free circulation of goods so that persons can now move their goods with ease from one protocol member state to the next. And I believe it is important to note to citizens that we are quite advanced in that regard, because as it stands now, these relevant legislative these legislative instruments are before the member states for their consideration and for implementation. I would also add, though, that in the context of the contingent rights policy and the bill in particular, we've taken note of the importance of the tools of trade, because we know as persons move particular professions, there is the requirement to move with your tools of trade. And the bill addresses that need to allow for the ease of the movement of tools of trade while we work on getting the free circulation of goods regime fully implemented as well.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Henry. There's another very specific question, in fact, two, that relates to the work of the OECS Commission. So I would pose those to you, but I want to prepare the minister. I'm coming to you with a question from the Windrush generation in terms of citizenship for the Windrush generation. I'll come to the Attorney General with that question. Dr. Henry, there's a question here. Can you elaborate on how the mutual recognition of driver's licenses works in practice? Further, what is the process for OECS citizens wishing to move their vehicles from one member state to another, taking into consideration matters such as insurance? Very good question.
Yes, it did, and it speaks to the whole issue of the practicality of what we're trying to do, what we're trying to present to citizens as a fundamental model for economic development in the member state, but also for their own advancement economically and socially. So, if I may start with the first one, with respect to the driver's license. So, again, sometimes we talk about political will and so forth. We are so pleased that the member states have amended legislations that allow an individual with a driver's license, a citizen from the protocol member state, for driver's license from their member state, valid driver's license. I mean, we know you can use it to travel, but having used it at the border, you can use it to facilitate your activities within that member state. So you're able to drive in that member state, in that protocol member state, with your government issued driver's license. And it's because the legislation allows for it. And in fact, for many citizens, the practical thing could be upon the need for renewal of that driver's license, you either renew in your home member state, or you can decide, given that you really become beyond just an OECS citizen, you're really part and parcel of that country you now have made home, you can decide, well, okay, I am going to apply and obtain a driver's license from that host member state. And in that case, you do not need to do any exams or any of those things. They would just facilitate the transfer of that driver's license. So I think that is a plus in the sphere of the whole concept of economic integration and movement of persons.
What about insurance, Pat? Insurance?
Yes, so so this is something that I believe we would need to do some further work in, because again, I'm going to tie this to our aspiration to advance, a sort of fast ferry system, because that's, again, we're not 100% there. We are very, very much advanced. We're not 100% there. But this is one of the elements of the kind of benefits that persons are expected to get. So with a fast ferry system, definitely persons would want to be able to drive their car from their home onto that ferry and drive off in the host member state. I would love to do that, spend a few days and then drive back on and come back home, or even basically to move their vehicle as they relocate. So if they're relocating, the free circulation of goods regime, once fully established, will facilitate the ease at which you move your car, if you like, to the country where the protocol member state where you're relocating. But in the context of maybe shorter stay, there's still work to be done to ensure that we have a very seamless, effective system, which is connected with sort of a fast ferry system as well. So that's aspirational, and we're working towards it.
Okay, good. Minister Wilkin, there's a question. There's a community of individuals who desire to relocate back to the Caribbean, and a majority of them are descendants of the Windrush generation. Many are unable to attain Caribbean citizenship as their parents are not born in the Caribbean, besides a few islands in the OECS that allow citizenship through grandparents like Antigua, St. Kitts Nevis, and St. Lucia. What about the other OECS islands? Can you answer?
Well, that's a constitutional issue. It depends on what the Constitution and the citizenship acts of the various jurisdictions say. But what I would recommend, if there's a group of Windrush, would be probably grandchildren that are eager to come back home. I think that's a matter that should be raised with the OECS authority, and potentially there could be a joint decision by the OECS and potentially laws passed in each jurisdiction to facilitate those people who are our people, descendants of our people who left. I think Windrush was in the late 40s, I believe. So more than likely, the persons they're talking about are grandchildren of that generation of people who moved 70 years ago. Mm-hmm. So almost 80, almost 80 years ago. But so it depends. But it's better. It can be done by each jurisdiction. But it's probably better if it's done as a block. And then potentially, I can't speak about the constitutional provisions of other islands, but for example, in St. Kitts and Nevis, we allow grandchildren who are under 18. So if if your parent was born outside of the jurisdiction to a grandparent born within the jurisdiction, that person can be registered as a citizen once they're still a child. But if they're a group of adults of the Windrush descendants that are keen to contribute to the economic and social development of our country, then what we can do in St. Kitts is we can potentially pass a specific piece of legislation to allow those persons to apply. Of course, it would involve them proving that their grandparents were part of the Windrush generation, et cetera, et cetera. And a specific legislation can be crafted to allow those persons to apply for citizenship and then come and work. But there could also be a special immigration permission, a special work permit regime by the member states to facilitate that. So there are various options. So if there are a group that are organized, I recommend that they pursue this with the OECS authority, and then we go from there.
Okay, thanks very much, Minister. We're about to wrap up the webinar. I have two final questions for Dr. Clarence Henry, and then I'll come to each of the panelists for a 1-minute final word. Dr. Henry, this question says, what arrangements can be made to have OECS nationals receive similar privileges, work and stay, in overseas territories like the French member states, which we know are associate members of the OECS? And the other question, what are the next steps to advance contingent rights? What can persons expect in the short term?
Thank you. I think, again, very practical questions. We're happy to get those questions. So essentially, at the start of the webinar, certainly perhaps my intro statement, I would have highlighted the participating member states of the Economic Union. So the associate member states, which currently includes Anguilla, the BVI, and the two French territories, Martinique and Guadeloupe, and certainly we have Saint Martin coming on stream later this year as well, would not, because they're not part of the protocol establishing the Economic Union, those benefits that we've been talking about would not normally extend to these member states. What I can say, though, is that there is a a desire and a discussion around how do we strengthen the integration of associate member states within the broader OECS integration arrangement, where certain aspects can certainly be considered. That is quite new in discussion, and certainly we hoping that when this is certainly finalized, that there could be clarity in terms of how we can extend and address certain needs that associate member states would have, and certainly citizens who also from protocol member states who desire to find themselves benefiting more from having like a Martinique and a Guadeloupe as associate member states of the OECS as well. So that is new in the discussion, and that is something that one would have to consider. In terms of next steps, I mean, we're happy that quite a number of persons took the time out to follow this webinar. We recognize, as I've said before, the contingent rights is at the heart of the free movement regime. It's fundamentally important. This first phase really introduces this opportunity for us to continue our advocacy efforts. So on one hand, we continue to work with member states towards the finalization of the model bill for contingent rights, and then moving towards the effort by each protocol member state towards enacting the bill. But as this process continues, the OECS Commission, as we seek to continue to add value to our protocol member states in that regard, will work hand in hand with the protocol member states towards strengthening advocacy elements, because again, we may need now to move in member states, as it were, to support because there are a lot of critical issues around implementation that citizens need to understand. And ultimately, what we will seek to do in all of our advocacy efforts is to articulate to citizens that the net outcome is a plus, a benefit for all of them. The net outcome is a plus and benefit for all of them. And certainly something that we want citizens to remember.
Okay, thanks very much. And I think we could consider those your final remarks. So I really want to thank all the panelists. I will now invite Mr. Gordon Charles, your final 1 minute.
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much. Just to say, on behalf of the OECS Business Council, that we stand ready to participate in support of this legislative initiative. The Business Council has been recently rejuvenated and will shortly be launching a world-class level virtual platform, which will provide opportunities to facilitate the listing of regional employment opportunities, as well as employees looking to deploy their talent and expertise in order to match them. So we're creating a platform, a virtual platform where people looking for jobs can seek and advertise there, and people who are advertising jobs will be able to do so as well. So part of the process of supporting this whole initiative of contingent rights and people being able to move and work within the sub-region, we are fully on board in supporting from that perspective. Further, we will be creating a space where a professional social community network for less traditional industries can bloom. So there are smaller businesses, and whether it is the basket making in Dominica and so on, the communities can come together and talk regionally by creating social networks within our virtual platform and start to communicate amongst themselves to create a stronger presence for their industries to share and grow through communication and collaboration. So we are very much tied in with the whole initiative of being able to move across the region and the contingent rights that come out of it. And our efforts over the next coming months will, I think, bear fruit towards supporting this initiative.
Thank you very much. Ms. Natasha Greaves, your final comments?
Thank you very much to the OECS Commission for this opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Grenade, for being a wonderful host with us. I want to reiterate IOM's commitment to support the OECS in terms of its advocacy and all its work that it wants to do. And as part of policy harmonization, I need to put this out there that together with CARICOM, IOM is working on a regional approach to migration development, so policy development. So this is something that, we can look forward to. And again, from a Caribbean level, we have policies and everything will be seamless in terms of free movement. Thanks again and wonderful to be here.
Thank you very much. Minister Wilkin?
We are stronger together than separate. And the free movement of people and the contingent rights are fundamental to an integrated, resilient, sustainable, prosperous Eastern Caribbean for the ultimate benefit of our people. And I can tell you on behalf of the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, we are committed to this process and we're prepared to take it to the next phase.
Thank you very much. And before I invite Dr. Valda Henry, I want to let all participants know that there is a poll in the chat so that you can tell us your thoughts on this webinar. Dr. Valda Henry.
Thank you so much for being part of this great panel. And this panel was very timely. And I support some comment asking for more because just last night there's a chart of Dominicans living in St. Kitts. And someone asked a question about work permit, and somebody answered and said, yes, you require work permit, and was given the process. But I'm pleased to say that there were non-public persons in this chat who said, absolutely not. You don't need a work permit, and began. So what it does demonstrate is that while, yes, there's information, there's still some pockets where the information needs to be sent further. So just to encourage. But I just want to leave 5 things I think we can begin to do together on OECS. And the ECCP and OECS work together on a number of issues. And the ECCP continues to be committed to our collaboration. Is one of our streamlining of border protection. I think that is something to be worked on further. Complete the portability of Social Security benefits, the interoperability of our data and our digital processes, to expedite regional digital ID initiative, that's an initiative, and to strengthen our regional transportation, which Dr. Clarence spoke about and told us, big progress. So soon we should have this fast ferry among ourselves. And again, thank you so much, moderator, the OECS, for organizing it, all the persons behind the scene. Panelists, you were excellent. And without the viewers, our audience, we thank them so much for being part of that and for being fully engaged in the questions that they pose. Thanks.
Yes, and thank you very much, Dr. Henry, and thanks to all the panelists. We started off with Sophie and Charles in 2 nice little videos trying to help us understand free movement within the OECS. And I think this webinar did provide, in fact, information on our rights, because as Dr. Henry is saying, many OECS nationals are not sure. Can we work? Can we move? What then would happen with our families? So I think this is the beginning of a conversation, or the continuing of a conversation that has to continue. I hope that from this webinar, we would pull together comments from the audience. I'm sorry we could not take all the questions, but I'm hoping that the OECS Commission would be able to collate the questions so that we could at least have another round of conversations. So thanks again. I really want to thank those behind the scenes who were working really hard to make this possible. Shakira Gravalis and the entire team of the Regional Integration Unit at the OECS Commission for their hard work, Dr. Henry and his team. And to you, the panelists, and to all of you who have joined us within the OECS, within the wider CARICOM, in the diaspora, we just hope that this webinar did provide you with some answers to the burning questions that you may have had. And we look forward again to another opportunity to speak about the OECS. Many islands, one region. Impactful, meaningful regionalism. Thank you very much. I'm Wendy Grenade. Thank you. We off air? Thank you all. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yes, it was nice. We still online?
Yes.
Yes, we're online. We're not live.
Oh, we're not
It's
live.
not live
We're
anymore?
just
We're not
online.
live, right? That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yes, this was very good. Oh, we need to do this again. This was take off the recording. This was really good. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to take part in this. Yeah.